Hi, this is Simon Hepburn from Marketing Advice for Schools, and I'm going to talk about making the business case for school marketing and communication. And the reason why we're doing this is because schools are really facing big challenges at the minute, which I'll talk about. And in order to solve those challenges, there's a real need to sort of create a sort of formal marketing and communications response in many cases that can make a real difference. And sometimes schools don't do that, and there are consequences from it, and also they miss out the benefits of moving through and doing that. So let's have a quick look at the challenges first of all that schools are facing. First of all, obviously there's the whole funding issue. Schools budgets are under strain. It's really difficult to bring in money to pay people to fund all the other things that schools are doing. There are still changes in the schools market. Pupil numbers are falling due to demographic changes, but at the same time there are free schools opening, academy chains are expanding, grammar schools may be expanding in some areas as well. So there's lots of little changes in your local market that you need to be aware of. We've also got problems about recruitment, particularly secondary school teachers, particularly in some areas like physics and design technology, but also support staff, TAs, special educational needs support, and so on. Real problems with getting people to come and take jobs within teaching. And then on a more sort of mundane day-to-day levels, every day there are schools facing issues with protests by students, teachers getting annoyed, new policies coming in, and so on. So schools need to look to marketing and communications to try and solve all these issues. Now, one of the things at the conference today is that a lot of these areas will be looked at in more detail. So people will look at Brenda Schneider this afternoon. We'll look at student recruitment. We've got people talking about how to use social media better, how to a fascinating one about Parents Association and hearing from them what do you actually need to do that. But there are some consistent things that sort of run through that. So I guess my thought really is that I'm going to give you a process for today to have a look at and see how you can map some of the individual learnings from later on into an action plan that maybe you could take on later on and action over time. Okay, let's look at the sort of slightly negative side of things first of all. Here are things not to do. Here are solutions that schools, try or maybe don't try. The first is that, they ignore issues. I think recruitment has been a great example of this, where schools have said, it's fine, recruitment's going to get better, or the government's going to step in and give people, enormous pay rises and transform the teacher recruitment market. But that isn't necessarily the best way of doing things. Another suggestion is to keep on doing the same things and hoping that improves. I was reading on social media about someone who said it was great that school managed to find a suitable teacher, having advertised for the third time. But that's the same advert 3 times. Why do you think it's going to get any better? Why do you think you're going to get any better responses? And at some point during the year, doing that will run out and you won't be able to find anybody. So you've got to think a little bit outside the box. Schools with money, again, rather than, as we'll say, seeing a bit planning ahead, either make cuts, and they cut really important, support staff like TAs, and that causes problems for staff and teacher recruitment and so on. Or they cut support staff in other areas, and that has issues. Or schools, keep on going and hope they can run with budgets, and then suddenly find they have to spend huge amounts of money on things like supply teachers, or using recruitment agents, or running events or marketing in the summer to try and find people to fill up all the spaces. So again, be really careful about that. Another thing schools do is that they try and rely on volunteers. There's nothing wrong with using volunteers, and I don't want to cut across the talk this afternoon about PTAs and parent associations and so on, but rather than just relying on a parent who has a bit of spare time, or a governor who has a knowledge of business to try and solve things, isn't necessarily going to be wonderful. So what are the alternatives to these 4 issues? I think the first one is to really have a good focus on the future. What might happen that will affect your school? We'll look at those in a couple of minutes in a bit more detail. Rather than saying things, keep innovating. Today is a great opportunity to learn about new innovations, new ideas, and hopefully you will do that. Rather than in money in terms of spending little or lots. It's like, let's actually go ahead and say, what does success look like if we are full as a school, if we fill all our spaces in year, if we have a good recruitment year, how much more money will that mean? What could we spend in order to achieve that? Okay, that's the sort of idea there. And then, again, rather than looking for volunteers, investing properly in the right people, the right technology and culture, and also the right training to make sure that people can really deliver. So let's have a look at those four in detail. How do you become aware of what's happening around you? Well, the first thing is to provide some, is to do audits on a regular basis in different areas. I've got a few suggestions here. The first is just to really be clear that what you're trying to communicate about your school is out there in the market, that everyone agrees with that. One example that I've come across as a consultant to schools was a school that had the word smart it's one of the key words it was trying to communicate. But when we did a survey of stakeholders, people couldn't agree whether smart meant well dressed or smart meant intelligent. The school wanted it to be intelligent, but that was sort of causing a little bit of friction in terms of getting that there and making sure their brand was well communicated. Schools should also regularly be testing the wider market, seeing what's happening in terms of social changes, economic changes, political changes such as new free schools, but also technology changes in terms of what people are using in terms of school technology and so on. Things like online learning, the rise of schools that are entirely digital coming in there. Most importantly, demographics. Are there increasing or decreasing birth rate in your area? Are there particular groups that are moving in and out? Issues such as Brexit, have changed the makeup of particular areas in positive and negative ways. There's also, I've been working in areas where there's been a lot of people moving from Hong Kong, which is really good for school recruitment. But again, that might need to change how you communicate. Find out what other schools are doing. Very important to keep looking at your competitors, both current competitors but also future competitors, particularly if there are new schools opening or expanding, as I said before. But also, are they trying different things? Are they opening a nursery? Are they offering wraparound care, things that might affect your income? And finally, a sort of internal analysis is a picture on the right-hand side of uniform, and uniform is one of those things that always causes trouble with parents. But again, are you assessing that if you change your uniform, what issues might arise with parents, what issues might arise with students? Because if you are one of these schools that gets negative press coverage for a change, that can stick with you for a long time. You could be known as the school that has a problem with uniform, or the school that made the changes to toilets that it did. Unfortunately, so thinking about how that's communicated, and also what the opinion of your stakeholders might be with that. So think about that as we go through the rest of today. Second thing is about innovation and just trying different things. We talked about demographic change in the previous slide. There are a couple of schools I know where they've had a change of their, in terms of who their local community are. The picture on the right is sort of illustrating an Indian, South Asian wedding. And again, by becoming a venue for the sort of large weddings that many people in those communities have, the school's been able to get more people in, being able to learn about the culture and so on about that, and that's really helped in terms of recruitment, but also in terms of income in the short term. Nice example here in terms of recruitment. Can you try something different to recruit people? This particular article from a couple of years ago was about duvet days. Duvet days is essentially a practice that is sometimes common in other industries, where people can take a day off, at short notice because they want to go and do something different, or because the stereotype because they've been out partying the night before. That might not go down particularly well, with traditional teachers, but in this example, this article, it's shown that wellbeing days and the duvet days has actually really helped staff retention. So, think about that. And when we get on to Sue's talk next, there might be issues that you can pick up from that. Again, working with local businesses and asking them for help. is something that schools can do. And again, I was talking to a governor of a school in London a couple of days ago, and we're talking about things like engaging local businesses on community days, which businesses often run these days where they encourage staff to go out and spend a day decorating a school. Make sure that your school is that one. Or the example of the right-hand side, if you've got old laptops from a company that gets rid of them, they're still really useful for schools. Can you work on that? So simple ideas of innovation, that obviously more of them that would come up. And finally, in this section, what about former students? Creating links with them, bringing them back in to help your career provision. So again, ideas that will help you stand out from the crowd, be different, and so on. The third point, really, once you've audited where you are, once you've come up with innovative ideas, what impact will this actually have? So where is your problem at the minute? How will this change over the next few years? And also, what additional costs will happen? So, for example, if you can't recruit enough staff, then can you run a sixth form? Or can you run a sixth form program in a particular subject like design technology or physics, where there are problems like that? If you can't find a specialist TA, you can't then bring it. Can you then support children that you need to, where they have any a personal care plan or something like that, ECHP? So those sort of issues, working out what the costs are, what the benefits are of that, and then looking at what the return on investment might be, and using something like a return on investment calculator, where you actually look at what the actual practical benefits are. That goes down really well when you're talking to chief financial officers or something like that. We have one example. Very recently, talking to a school in local to me in Manchester, they had an open day. For their nursery, a couple of parents didn't turn up, so the local person in charge of communication in the school phoned up and said, "Sorry, you missed it. Can you come around for a tour?" They both came in. They both loved the school. They both signed up, and I pointed out to her that she'd probably saved the school made the school £50,000 just in those 2 phone calls and the tours, obviously. And that's really, really important to think about that. And finally, again, are there other benefits? For example, one of the things I talk to schools a lot about is simplifying parental communication, so it's not so not so many people sending newsletters and all sorts of things, and actually you end up with a less stressed school office, particularly on Fridays when they're putting the newsletter together, like today. So hopefully that's again something that you might think about when you're putting these plans together. And then finally, the final bit about making your case for investment, as marketing people, obviously you have day-to-day jobs about communication and social media, all sorts of things. But at the same time, are there ways that you could present to senior leaders, governors, and so on, to say, well, actually, let's try and fix some of these bigger problems. That's our job, really, rather than just doing the day-to-day stuff. So what do you do? Focus on the big problems, whether that's teacher recruitment, student recruitment, parental engagement, or something like that. As I said, show the impacts that have been made elsewhere. Tell the story of what change will happen at your school if it follows along a similar pathway. Be clear about the investment that's needed in this. You've got the idea of cash. You've looked at the budgets, but also think about the time that people need to spend on it. Do you need any more people? Do they need to be trained, and so on? The biggest problem sometimes with programs like this is that people, particularly working in schools, think they can do more than they can, or they don't budget enough, particularly for people and particularly for training and particularly for things like that, not so much for money. I find it in my experience, and so what you end up with is projects that don't really deliver to the extent that they could. And finally, as you say, with all marketing activity at this sort of level, make sure that you've got support at a senior level and that it's treated as a strategic project. So I said that the aim of the whole day today really is trying to think about strategic change, the business case for marketing. So as we go through today, hopefully you will see examples where you can put this together. So I'll just show you a very quick example of this. School I've been working with for a few years in Manchester called Burnage Academy for Boys. Interestingly, as you can read in depth, it was an Ofsted outstanding school, but that still didn't help it recruit, and there's a not as good a correlation between an Ofsted report and what parents think of a school as many people think. So what they actually did was to make some of the changes that we're talking about, really, which is thinking about time, thinking about money for marketing. I work with them, hence the marketing advice for schools bit there, but looking at the staff, looking at the branding, and very much actually putting pupils at the heart of their marketing. And you can see what the impact's been. Okay, that the numbers have gone up by 70, and the school is getting towards being full all the way through now, and that means that it can grow, it can invest, it could take on new staff and all sorts of things that are happening, and it very much is a virtuous cycle. Okay, things get better as we go. Here's a very quick video. Hopefully we can see this. Okay.
Coming in early 2023, expect something spectacular.
No teachers, no scripts, just pupils voicing their opinions.
So Manchester,
Are
you
ready?
So as you can see from the video, they didn't just do traditional marketing things. They did some real innovation, and part of that innovation was setting up something called the School Media Team, which is a project that I'm involved in as well, working with some great digital experts. So if you wanted to find out a bit more about what Marketing Advice for Schools does, please look at our website or have a click on School Media Team if you'd like to use your students to innovate in that particular area. So hopefully you enjoy the rest of today and pick up really good tips on how to really make the business case for marketing and communication.